Okay. Some kid had gotten hurt at Jefferson High School last week, and of all places, the chemistry lab. My name's Jeff, and I have to admit this is the first time I'd ever been called into a high school cab. But I have investigated my fair share of cabs, and one thing I've learned is that somebody goofed. Let's go, Bruno.
Lieutenant, can I talk to you for a second?
Shut up!
Bruno, I'm busy.
The office sent us up to see Mr. Pete, the chemistry teacher.
May I help you?
Morning. I'm Lieutenant Gremlin. This is Sergeant Gremlin. I think you know why we're here. The place looked real nice. It was all nice. Clean floors and uncluttered floor tops. Nice. The guy even had safety posters on the walls. Hard to imagine an accident happening here.
It's very rare. But you know, a chem lab can be a very rare place. There are hazards everywhere.
You're kidding. Where?
Let me show you around.
Sex.
You see this?
Yeah.
Nitrogen. One drop can burn a hole through your skin. Hydrochloric acid. Breathe too much of the fumes, and you could end up with permanent damage.
That's a lot of damage.
And in here we have white phosphorus. Handle this the wrong way, watch out. Sodium. Mix this with water. Boom! 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 Boom!
Every time you drop the bomb, you kill the god your child has born.
Typical chem lab has hundreds of different chemicals in it. If you're not careful with them, you the wrong way.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Mr. Pete told us how each and every chemical in his lab had been completely and properly and completely labeled and stored in the proper manner. It may have been a high school chem lab, but I could see this wasn't a high school chem lab.
There are spills and slips and falls.
This place is a death trap.
It's like I always tell my students. While it's extremely unlikely, accidents can happen and people can get hurt. And they must get hurt. Here's a little demonstration I show my students. I'm going to simulate a small explosion. If this were a kid, he'd probably be blind. This one, maybe some minor facial burns, but nothing.
This guy seemed to have his ass covered, so I decided to interview a few of his students.
What do you want to talk to me for?
I understand you were doing some kind of experiment today.
That's right. I was hiding.
So tell me about it.
Well, let's see. First, I had to dilute the acid.
How'd you do that?
I had to dilute the acid. Acid should only be diluted by pouring them into acid.
Why is that?
It'll mix better that way, with less chance of it splashing in your face. You're not going to believe this, but once I saw a guy put a stirring rod in his acid. A good rule in the lab is to put nothing in your acid. You should never touch the chemicals with your hands, either.
How do you know you were diluting sulfuric acid and not something else?
Mix-ups can happen. That's why everything we use is labeled. And then we check and double 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 check those labels before we use them. It's kind of like what Mr. PP is always telling us. Spilled acid should be cleaned up right away. The best thing to use is a caulk, which Mr. PP keeps handy whenever we're working with acids.
What if you spilled a base? Use the same stuff?
Heck no. If you spill a base, you should clean it up with a vinegar solution. That's an acid. You see how it works? If you spill an acid, clean it up with a base. If you spill a base, clean it up with an acid.
Okay. Now, I know you were careful and all, but let's just supposing that you had spilled some of that acid on your acid. What then?
Acids and alkalis will burn your acid. You gotta get it off fast, using plenty of running water.
I could see this kid wasn't going to fall for cheap tricks.
Lieutenant, can I talk to you for a second?
Not now, Bruno. I'm busy. I understand you were working with a gas burner today.
That's right.
Pretty dangerous, isn't it?
Well, it can be if you don't know what you're doing, but Mr. PP gave us complete instructions.
Go on.
Well, the first thing I did was to make sure that the gas hose was properly connected to the jet.
What would you do if there were some volatile materials around, like,
Mighty putty.
or...
Bombs?
Well, I make sure there's none of that around before I light the burner.
Okay. So what happened next?
I don't even know.
What'd you do with the tubing?
I was setting up an experiment, and I needed to run it into an experiment.
Sounds like that could get tricky.
Yeah, it can be. What you have to do is lubricate it first. Glycerin is best. Then you use a towel to protect your hand and insert the tube slowly using a rotating motion. You gotta be real careful. The stuff breaks easy.
Then what?
I had to heat some chemicals in a test tube. As always, I made sure the gas was open
Why is that?
for safety. When chemicals are heated, they can boil over very quickly and shoot out.
The kid was I thought I'd find out just how Let's just say, for the sake of example, that you did something wrong and you wound up with a fire on your hands.
First, I tell everyone to move away. Then I grab the fire extinguisher.
You know how to use it?
Sure do. Mr. PP showed us how.
And what if someone's clothing caught on fire? Would you use the fire extinguisher?
Oh, no. A fire extinguisher should never be used on a person.
Then what would you do?
I'd smother it using the fire extinguisher.
Okay. Oh, you can go.
Thanks a lot.
A few seconds later.
Okay. I give up. I just can't figure it. You and your students are doing everything right. They know how to handle chemicals, how to use a gas burner, how to work with gas. They know what to do in emergency situations. I don't get it. How could there have been an accident here?
Accident? What accident?
The lab accident here at Jefferson High.
This isn't Jefferson High.
What'd you say?
I said this isn't Jefferson High.
I'm not done yet.
Good talking to you.
Anytime, Lieutenant.
Come on, Bruno. Let's go to Jeff High.
Okay, boss.
Like I was saying, Bruno may not have been the brightest guy in the department, but he was the brightest man to have around.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend. The end of our elaborate plans. The end of everything that stands. The end, no safety or surprise.
This isn't Jefferson High.
I'll